one. I wonder where Clive is from the electric highway. Oops. And Rob Vance, if you get the chance, come on over. So we'll go with the easy ones that relate to the experts that are on stage. If you're interested in energy efficient healthy homes, this is the session for you. Mr. Gorman, we've been building houses in Australia under a particularly unique model, which started with the English. We should be doing new homes and renovations. That's our ultimate design goal.
I probably think that we're heading towards a cultural change in that once upon a time we were willing to interact with our building and open doors and windows and be in a position where we like to do that, and the cultural change is that we don't necessarily want to interact with our building manually, but we want to do it in an automation kind of way, so our buildings have to then adapt to that, and we end up with a building that is slightly tighter and needs to operate rather more automatically than manually in the previous regime.
Yep.
I can understand why too, because everything else is on an app now, isn't it? And the young man from Aurora was saying you can now engage with your electricity and turn this on and turn this off when it's too expensive. Bryce, your experience is so vast. Do you have any comments about, from today, 2024, it's November, if someone's considering an EV, what would be the three top tips or the things to think about?
I might jump in on the
Go for
housing.
it. And if you want to talk about the building industry,
because
go
the car
ahead.
will be an integral part of your house in the future. It will be your soak up of your solar. It will be your home power supply if there's a power problem, or really expensive power supplies because you go vehicle to home, vehicle to grid.
Yep.
It will become an integral part of your whole ecosystem of the house.
Yeah.
Just saying it's just electric vehicles and electrification of everything as it happens. It's just all tied together.
It's not.
And one of those things is looking for when you're buying a car.
Yeah.
Is some people want vehicle to grid, so that will be coming within the next 12 to 18 months. But it'll be very expensive for the early adopters. You're paying 10 grand or more, 12 grand, 10 grand with a box, a couple of grand more to install them. You probably have to wait 3-4 years to get a sensible price for those things and get a number of cars you can buy with it. So if you're waiting for that one, you're probably 3 to 5 years away from getting it. But if you don't want vehicle to home grid stuff, pretty much the things to look for now is there a car available in your particular market? A small car, a medium car, an SUV, a tow car, all of those things are becoming available, and it's just a matter of see which one suits your needs and which one meets your price bracket. And there's more cheaper cars coming out all the time. So if you're waiting on, if everything else adds up and not the price, you're probably only 6 to 18 months away from making a purchasing decision on a price basis.
Did you see the presentation this morning was up to $80,000 energy loans with Bank of Us and Aurora, unencumbered. It doesn't even have to be attached to your house, so it can be a car right now.
Yep,
So the can I afford the EV is out the door, because for 80 grand you'll get the car, the panels, and the batteries.
And the changes in the FBT legislation, the fringe benefits tax legislation, means that instead of incentivising people to buy four-wheel drive big utes because they pretend that they're a work car, they now just say you don't even have to justify it as non-personal use. FBT is actually pushing more and more leases into the electric land, electric vehicles.
Wow. And I just wondered too, we laughed last year that novated leases were a thing, and now they really are a thing, that your employer wants you to do that. Rob Manson's still over there. He was going to address your item there about how much the V2G thing cost. Have you seen that display they've got over there?
I've been that busy for the last 3-4 days that I haven't actually looked at the stands yet.
He has a product over there. We rang Lawrence and Hanson, who are the distributors for SIG Energy, and they've now built it into your house. So if you're if you're planning a new home, wouldn't you be silly, Wayne, not to design the roofs maximum north?
That's an interesting point because the truss manufacturers have this conundrum where they are asked to design a house package for trusses, and then when the building's about to be built, someone comes and asks, "Oh, will my trusses hold up a whole solar package?" And the truss manufacturers go, "No, we didn't take that into account because you didn't ask for it."
So it needs to be taken into account, the weight of the panels.
Yeah.
Is it the weight or the uplift?
Both. Dead load, glide load.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it needs to be taken into account, and sometimes the roof is loaded up, whether the calcs have been done or not, but that needs to be taken into account. And it's probably just a lack of knowledge on the part of the consumer that they should be asking that question, and smack on the wrist for the builder for not taking that into account.
Actually, here's a question. Sorry, I was just
Bryce?
say his question for you. Should the NZ's National Construction Code be updated to assume solar panel loads?
Yes, correct.
If there was updated to just require it from, all loads will include the weight of solar panels on that roof.
That's in volume 2 for commercial, that covers class 2 to 9s, but there's still a bit to go for the ordinary residential class buildings. Yeah.
Is there an ideal angle for a roof? Like, should we go back to skillions that face north and forget the hip pitch multi-angled roofs and just design, like, if you can design a house just for solar, would you be crazy not to? And if so, what's the angle of roof, and is there an ideal roof for collecting?
No, I don't. I think we've passed that point where you had to have the perfect orientation and the perfect pitch. You can have split banks and all sorts of things, so I don't think that's so much of a problem. There is still a lack of consideration for passive orientation, in that the garage is often facing in the best direction.
Yep.
And taking the best energy out of the building. That's probably the big one.
From a solar gain perspective,
Yeah.
Wayne?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We had one of our sponsors give us a video, and there's a man there in Melbourne whose house was built in 1905, double hungs, leaking like a sieve, but he's put 40 kilowatts of solar on the house, the fence, panels, the whole shooting match. He hasn't bought electricity for quite some time. And you just think, well, is it the design of the house, or is it the willingness of the owner to go down the active? So I want a passive solar house, but I've got to be active with my house. Is that what we're coming to?
Yeah, often the solar gets cut out at the end. The client has a wish list and goes, okay, let's do X, Y, and Z, and we'll put solar on the roof and everything. All the tenders and the pricing comes in, and then it's like, oh, our budget doesn't quite hit that, so let's shave things off. And then the first thing to go is, oh, we'll get rid of solar because we can do that later on. I've talked to a couple of builders, and they actually have solar as part of their package. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You're getting solar on the roof. It's a no-brainer. It goes part of your home loan. You'll pay it off in X amount of time, and you got the benefit from day one. So
is it
why
part
not
of your
do it?
energy
Yeah.
rating too, Wayne?
Not in Victoria, not in Tassie at the moment. It is on the Big Island, but it's coming.
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Any comment on what you would and wouldn't do in your house, Bryce? Is your house all best practice?
My house is quite old, and I'm actually looking at moving, so I sort of got halfway and then stalled. So I'd had solar panels since 2008. I haven't paid electricity bill since then, although I will as of 2 days ago, because they got rid of the premium solar feed-in tariff in Victoria. So I will sadly have to pay electricity bills again, but it's paid itself off multiple times
Yeah,
in
lovely.
that time, so I'm not complaining. It was over generous at the time. I've actually run in circuits to put in because I'm an electrician myself. I've run all the circuits in ready for induction cooktop and get rid of gas altogether. But strange enough, I actually own a rental property. That's off gas. I put all that stuff in there, but I haven't done it on
In
my
your
own
own house, yeah. And it's funny
done.
that you mentioned induction cooking too, because I think induction cooking came out quite some time ago, and yet it's still such a small part of the new home mix. And yet once you've used it, it'd be like an electric car. You can't go back to gas. The belief that gas and electricity give you the control, but until you've used induction, and from a safety perspective. So, those are some of the simple things that can be done. What's the number one thing, do you think, Bryce, that we should be thinking about with an electric vehicle, now that we've got some people here who look like they're keen?
It's often people ask me, what's the best electric vehicle? I'm going, what's the best car that you could buy in general? It's just what suits you. So it's very hard to say what's the one thing. It's just look for a car that suits your needs, but don't get a big car if you don't drive to Cape York towing a very large caravan every year.
So the number one thing is to buy a car that meets your needs.
Yes. So if if it's just yourself running around as a commuter car, buy a small car.
Yep.
That you can do so much more for the environment by just right sizing your vehicle. I have 2 electric vehicles at the moment, and one of them is a very old Mitsubishi Imea. It's a little car, and it's my little round town go-to. And even in Melbourne, I can get most places in it, even after 14 years old car. Still got 70 k's of range.
Yeah,
So
wow.
That's another one of the myths that the batteries don't last. I forgot to cover that one this morning. Another.
Yes.
I could prove it with my little Imea.
Yep. And Wayne, if you're out dealing with builders, is there a chance for you to advise the client as well on what they should be thinking about? Like, do builders send their clients to you to talk turkey and get real?
Not usually, no.
No. So how does it work? How does your sphere of influence work with the builders and the designers?
Often I get all the information at the 11th hour. It's called a panic assessment, because all the documentation's done, the engineering's done. Here's the design, make it work. That's the usual scenario. And if it doesn't cut the mustard and comes in low, then there's this juggle about, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do it? And it ends up costing the client, because it's a fix-up that should have been dealt with at the very beginning. There's a lot of designers now and architects that are realising that they need to engage earlier, actually show that the design's going to work, and then after that it's an easy run. So they're getting there. It's just taking a little bit of change and adaptation, I suppose.
And I suppose we were just talking with some of the car dealerships, the person knows as much about the car as the rep. And it's not the case with new homes and renovations yet, is it? It's still this secret thing that the others do. So is the advice really for consumers to get educated early before they plan?
Yes, if the client wants to be educated. Some people are just looking at the gold taps and the stone bench top. Energy efficiency, don't care about it. So it all comes back to the client, whether they're actually proactive or
not,
or would just want everything handed over to them.
Yep. And Bryce, when you talk to people who are owning EVs, what are they thinking about? How does the car relate to the house, or is it not connected yet?
It doesn't. It's a very good soaking up of your excess solar. So very early adopters all did the solar first, electric cars second. It's a really good way of soaking up excess solar. So that is basically how EVs are connected to your car house at the moment. As I said, in the longer term, it will be your vehicle to grid, and vehicle to home first, and then vehicle to grid, and that will give you your backups or your just cheaper power during the.
Yeah.
So you soak up your power from your solar during the
Yep.
sunny afternoon, and feed it back into your house in the evening, and save on those expensive tariffs
Yep.
as they happen.
We're not going to get Rob Manson from I Want Energy. He's talking to people.
I think he's having too much of a fun time over there to want to join us.
How dare you be servicing customers' needs? I'm going to come down off the stage because we can talk for quite some time, but I'm more interested in your questions. Did you have a question at all, sir?
Yeah, I didn't come with a question. I've just thought up one. I think you said that you have a rental property. Do you have solar on that? And what are the issues with rental properties and solar?
I'm getting quotes on putting solar in now, but there's no grants to put it in, so I'm slightly mad.
Is that a question? Sir, did you have a question?
Good question,
for the expert?
actually.
Don't have one? Young
Not
man,
a lot
did
of
you have a
incentives
question?
for rental property and energy efficiency.
Not yet. So if you're in a block of units or a block of flats, how do we differentiate that one person's going to be able to charge and the costs are going to go through the roof for the rest of us, and I don't want to share my energy? Did you see?
I think that man would probably be able to explain it even
He
better
would.
than
Do you
I
want
can.
to jump up there?
It's basically a matter of load management. You put in a charging system that the chargers can talk to each other. So you can either set them as a fixed demand on the charges, and they can share it between them. And that's part of the process we did for the EV policy advice for the ACT government. It was that sort of level. Or you can actually do a dynamic management where it measures how much building power is coming in, and you can set that limit and say, well, it's variable, and we can share all that around between the charges as well. So there's 2 layers to it.
Yeah.
And there will be a third as well, when the grid can communicate with the charges, and they can control, please charge lots, because we've got lots and lots of sun and wind.
Yep.
And so that third layer will be coming.
Yeah, Will was talking about that from Aurora. 100,000 Tasmanians are now engaged with the app. Well, who would have ever thought that the energy grid would have needed to talk to the energy provider to maximise their use of electricity and our reduction in price? The free hour from Aurora is just, quick, plug everything in. Wayne, if you had your time again, if we're sitting here today thinking about a new house of a design, what would be the top tips, do you think, for that healthy, energy efficient house that we aspire to?
If possible, some good passive solar design. After that, looking at the shell of the building and making sure it's going to perform. And then I suppose just the add-ons after that. Yep.
You said passive design. What does that mean?
Means making sure that the garage is somewhere else other than the best place.
And you said best place. Where's the best place to attract passive solar?
Well, we've got a quadrant from northeast to northwest where you can pick up some good solar design, and that also comes down to what are the front rooms, which rooms are going to pick that up. You don't necessarily want your bathrooms and laundries and everything out on the north side with little windows that are not going to create a good benefit for the house. But in Tassie, it's often very difficult because you get up on an elevated piece of ground, you're looking out to the south, you've got the best views. What are you going to do? You're going to put a heap of glass in there. So then it's a juggle of, okay, if we're going to put a lot of glass to the south, how are we going to compensate for that? Try and get some good solar in, and we can plug some glass, high level glass out to the north and get some sun in and make it all work. So it's all doable. It's just doable. Knowing beforehand, not sitting down in the building 2 years later going, I wish we had done this or that.
Yep. And
if you've got a choice of putting solar in or just doing other work on the house, what would be in Tasmania, what percentage of people, if they've got a budget of $2,000 or $3,000, would be better off doing a solar install versus something completely different, like better insulation or double glazed windows? And would there be some general advice you give to people who are looking to improve their energy efficiency and minimise their energy costs?
If you look at the longevity of the building, the building codes says that a building now only has to last 25 years, which is ridiculous. The previous code said that 50 years. So if we look at a house for 50 years and we go, okay, what's got to work for 50 years? The shell of the building's got to work for 50 years. So if you're going to put some extra effort into probably the glazing, because that's the hole in the wall, that's where we're going to get the heat losses in the wintertime, that's probably going to be a good start. But you could then argue that, okay, if we put solar on the roof, we're getting the benefit of that. The shell of the building mightn't be performing as well as we would like, but the solar can offset. So it becomes a sort of horses for courses and courses for horses as to what your preference is. But at the end of the day, getting the shell working well, reasonably airtight, in that we don't want, a typical Australian front door leaks, probably 60% air. If you go to a modern house and go to the front door, close the door and push on the top corner, you'll get anything from 3 to 6 mil flex in that, and if the sun's shining on it, you can see daylight around it. It's going to leak like a sieve in the wintertime, and just simple things like that to tightening up the building. But it becomes a choice which way you're going to go, whether you put solar on the roof or invest in the shell of the building.
Double glazed PVC windows, mate. Nothing better. Bryce, we put vehicle to grid on there. We better address it. It's the elephant in the room. We've done the double glazing. We've fully insulated the house. There's less moisture trapped in the house. How do I make money out of vehicle to grid? Why should I plug my car into the national electricity grid when I want to plug it into my house and do a load of washing?
That's a $64 question, as Bob Dyer used to say. I'm guessing as the early adopters will actually get really good tariffs offered to them, and they will do it. And people are making, in those very early adopter trials, they're technical innovators, in fact, they're doing really well out of it. When everybody's got it, there will be virtually no incentive to put power back into the grid.
Except for power security.
But it'd be power security. So vehicle to home, my prediction is, my slightly cloudy crystal ball, is the vehicle to grid will probably not get used anywhere near as much for domestic use as people think it will be.
Yep.
Because when I first got a longer range EV with the Kona, instead of having to plug in every day, which is really annoying, as it turned out, I plug in every 3 weeks. So it's sort of plug freedom.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to want to go back to that to plug in all the time to keep my vehicle to grid system going.
Yeah.
But I will go out and plug in if I want to save money on the really expensive power charges on those really hot sunny afternoons.
Yeah.
I'll go out and plug my car in and run it off vehicle to home. But I think the vehicle to grid side may not take off anywhere near as much as people like to think. They've got energy security, cheaper power for vehicle to home, vehicle to grid. They've got to offer some good deals and people aren't going to bother.
Yep. It's interesting, isn't it, that we, when was the last brown coal power plant turned off in England?
What was that? I didn't quite hear you.
When did the coal plant get turned off, the coal power
It's
station?
just been turned off a few weeks ago. The last, believe it or not, the home of coal mining no longer digs it up to burn for power supply.
300 years they used it for. Yeah, 300 years.
Something we need to learn from here.
Yep. Wayne, tips and tricks, anything that if it was your house, what would you do? If you owned a house now, where would be the best investment? As the young man was asking, where do I spend my money?
I would make sure that the insulation levels are at maximum, because at the end of the day, insulation is cheap compared to everything else. And also, unfortunately, insulation installation is left to the person with the least knowledge of how to put it in and the person that least wants to do it. And unless you supervise that, you'll end up with an install that's probably 60% efficient. And Dr. Mark Dewsbury from UTAS has a rule of thumb that says if you have 10% gaps in your roof insulation, it's a 40% loss in energy efficiency.
Wow.
So it doesn't take much to have 10% gaps in your roof insulation. And we still haven't got to the point where we're installing efficiently, in that we buy nice big fat bats, we put them down in line with the ceiling joists, but then the ceiling joist becomes a bridge. So in reality, we should be going, okay, instead of putting an R7 bat in and trying to get good efficiency out of that, we should buy 2 times 3.5 bats, put one in with the joist runs, and then oppose the other one across the top, and then we got good continuity all over the ceiling space, and same amount of money, a little bit more installation and effort, but an excellent job that's going to be there for the next 50 years or 100 years, however long the building lasts.
Yeah, I noticed when they came with the government scheme and redid our ceiling insulation, that the ceiling insulation had shrunk. And when they did it, we halved our energy bill from one thing. It was like, wow, and they didn't charge us. Just crazy stuff. So that's all been good. Did you have a question, young man? You've just lobbed from protecting forests? Yes, nothing wrong with my eyesight. Anthony, isn't it?
Yeah. Just going back to batteries and vehicle to grid, we've got solar on our barn. Is that me? And we just got a second-hand Tesla which can't go vehicle to grid. But I've sort of been hanging around waiting. We've got a very old house, so it's full of leaks. It's pretty hard to fix that. But I've been thinking about, we've gone on to tariff 93, so we could use cheap electric power for the car. But then at night time, it's expensive. So when we're heating sitting there watching TV and eating and eating. So I'm thinking, do I put a battery in for so I can get cheap power at night time, or do I wait for vehicle to grid? Does that make sense?
Yes, I would suggest a combination of the two. Put a small battery in now, because I always say if you want vehicle to grid, there's a backup when power does turn off for a while. It generally, if you take the battery away in the car and go away for the weekend, if the power fails during the weekend, your fridge will still defrost. So you'll need a small battery, but much smaller batteries than people are putting in at the moment. So put in a small battery now and then wait for the vehicle to grid car later on, so you can use that to soak up your power and then give it back at the expensive times, but you've got a little backup battery. So don't spend on a big battery now, but it's probably worth spending on a littler battery now and then wait for the vehicle to grid car later on. So
What's a little battery? 3.5?
Yeah, probably a 3 kilowatt
Yep.
kilowatt hour battery,
Okay.
something like that. So
Yep.
not the 10, 12, 15 sort of numbers. 3, maybe 6 at the most.
And how many panels do we need then, Bryce?
I did a calculation before all electric houses, and a good efficient use of electricity in a house and electric vehicle in Victoria was about a 4 kilowatt system. You go all electric, I've got to redo the numbers, but it'd be probably about 5 to 6 in Victoria and probably a bit more in Tasmania. So if you want to go full electric with EV and provide as many kilowatt hours into and out of the grid over a year, I mean, with my 1.2 kilowatt hour system with a very efficient house, I generate exactly the same amount of electricity as I have used over the year.
Wow.
But just spread over different times.
Wow.
So it matches 1 to 1, although I charge at night and put solar back in during the day. So it sort of matches that way.
Yeah,
But
nice.
probably in Tasmania, probably between 5 and 8 kilowatts.
Yep.
Would for a domestic number.
Let's see if that rates with you, Wayne. The last 100 floor plans you've looked at, how many have had that much solar attached? How much solar has been specified into the houses that you're looking at?
I don't see that at my end. I'm getting plans that's are very minimal, so I'm sort of just looking at the shell of the building. I don't have an opportunity to jump into the solar side of it as yet. It'll probably come more and more to the fore. If we go to 7 stars in whenever, a year's time, 2 years' time, then that starts to become part of the mix because you have to achieve 7 stars for the shell of the building, but then all of the other componentry has to meet a base rate of 60 out of 100, and that'll wake everyone up right there and then.
Yep, lovely. So for people in older houses, is it the same question that Anthony just asked? Is it the fixing the gaps, or is it reducing the energy loss? What's going to be the most benefit?
I was involved in some studies, not here, it was in Footscray in Victoria, and we looked at old buildings, and a lot of them were 1920s, 30s and 40s. A lot of them had no insulation, and we did data testing and data logging and then energy rated the buildings, and it really highlighted the air leakage because you could bump up the insulation and you could keep on bumping it up, and the star ratings didn't go up accordingly, and you go, oh, why is that happening? And then as soon as you tackled the air leakage, what was occurring was that the rating just jumped through the roof because whatever warm air you created in the building, you were able to hold it there longer and get the benefit of it rather than it disappearing out of the building. So the air leakage is critical and is often sort of it's not on the radar and it's not sort of looked at as being important. But for me, in an older house, it becomes critical. It's tidy up the air leakage, you'll find that your building is much more comfortable to be in.
This session is sponsored by Selly's No More Gaps and Expander Foam. And it's true, I used to do similar work with very luxurious houses in Battery Point. And the minute I saw double hungs, I knew I was going to have a good commission check because you just press them and they go. One window, Anthony, $7,500. They didn't want to take the stained glass out, and I put a secondary window in there for them. Bang! And it was a huge window. So it is a big thing. Any other questions? Because the camera crew's over there yelling at me. For those of you who don't know Anthony Houston, do Google him today and have a look at the word factivist, because we took your word and it was for those of us who are activists, who act on facts. There's a shipload of them in the building today, Anthony, and all power to you for your work in the future. Can we thank Wayne and Bryce, please, everyone?
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.